Vegas, and welcome to Face the Tribune. We are so blessed today. We have a big show for you. We have the Las Vegas District Attorney, Clark County District Attorney Steve Wolfson, and his wonderful, beautiful daughter, Rebecca. She is a lawyer here, and we're just so blessed to be Americans today. And we have a wonderful President-elect Donald Trump that will be taking office in less than 56 days. So we're very excited about that. And once again, Rolando, how are you feeling today?
I'm doing great. I'm honored to have my friend Steve Wolfson here and his daughter Rebecca. And I know since she was a little girl, well, not that little, but younger than what it is now. And now she is an attorney already working. She's working at the courthouse right now, but she's already graduated, and I have the premise, I have the opportunity to have Rebecca Wolfson in my radio show for the first time, and this is the first show she ever done. Welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you for having me.
And what practice are you going to have?
You know, I'm not sure yet. The opportunity that I have clerking allows me a few more months to figure that out.
And then you're gonna what? You're gonna open your own office, or you're gonna be working for the district attorney?
Unfortunately, I can't work for the district attorney.
No?
Well, no, because my dad is the district attorney,
Uh-huh.
so there are some rules against that.
Oh, I thought maybe because he was jealous.
Well, I would hire her today. She's a quite capable young lawyer. I would hire her today, but in Nevada we have nepotism laws, which preclude me from hiring my daughter.
Well, this only applied to you, or
No, it applies to.
Because remember the previous district attorney, his wife was working in there.
Yeah, I think there might be an exception because they got married after they were both employed in the office.
And
It applies to, I think it applies, as I understand the law, to the hiring. So David Roger and Susan Roger, Susan's now one of our great Las Vegas municipal court judges, they got married after they were both employed in the office. I think the nepotism law precludes me from hiring somebody from the outside who's a direct family member.
And as much as I didn't like Stuart Bill. No, I'm sorry, Rex Bill.
Mhm.
I had to say, then as soon as he became the district attorney, Kathy, his wife, quit the office.
Mhm.
She
But I'm not sure if that's
she
because
went
of the
to work.
I'm not sure if that's the nepotism law, Rolando.
No,
And be careful what you say about Rex. Rex was a good friend of mine.
I know.
Rex was one of our founding cowboy buddies here
I
in
know.
Nevada.
I know.
Yeah.
I used to go to lunch with him every Friday.
Sure.
There was a restaurant over there.
Casa Don Juan.
No.
Casa
Way
Don Juan?
before Don Juan
Oh.
opened.
Okay.
I'm talking about when he was working for the sheriff's department.
Oh yeah. You're a lot older than me, Rolando. You go back to the 60s, the
Excuse me, I
70s.
can hear you.
You're a lot older than me.
I don't speak English.
All right. What do you want to talk about today?
I wanted to
Rolando?
talk about your plans. I don't know if you're gonna be running for governor or for attorney general, or what do you want? What is in?
So we're going to start off with a heavy question.
No,
You don't want to
no.
ask me what I like to
That's
eat or my
that's an
favorite
easy
color.
Probably softball question.
Yeah, that's not a softball question. Well, here's my answer to your question. You know, as the Clark County DA, I have one of the best jobs around.
Yes.
There's only one district attorney, and to be a district attorney in a major city is a remarkable, awesome responsibility. It really is. And then you combine that with being a district attorney in Las Vegas, with our celebrities and our athletes. So I really, really have a wonderful, wonderful job, and I really enjoy serving the constituents as the district attorney. How about that for a big no answer?
I think I'm going to hear No answer whatsoever.
That's the future governor right there.
How can you learn to be a politician, Steve Wolfson?
You know, they don't have politician schools, and I often talk about when our district court judges and all the judges actually in Nevada become judges, they're required by law to go to judicial college. All the judges in Nevada have to go up to Reno where the National Judicial College is. And I think it's for about 3 weeks to theoretically learn how to be a judge. They don't have anything like that for district attorneys.
Right.
When I became the DA about 58 months ago, but who's counting? It was a lot of learn as you go. Now, as you know, I've been in this community 36 years. I started my career a long time ago as a young deputy DA.
That's what I said. You had a little bit of experience.
I did. I had some history, and then as a criminal defense lawyer.
Who was your district?
Bob Miller.
Oh,
Bob
wow.
Miller was the district attorney who hired me. And Rexville was his assistant district attorney.
Yeah, right.
But then I went into private practice, and I focused primarily on state court criminal defense. So I was dealing with the district attorney's office for all these years. So even though there wasn't a place for me to go learn how to be the DA, I had a pretty good idea what the job was about.
Yeah, and then you went from city council to district attorney?
Yes, I became a city councilman in 2004. At the age of 50, I got a little restless, and I said, I want to mix up my life a little. So I ran for city council in a special election, and I was fortunate enough to win.
And by being a city attorney, you was allowed to be
City councilman.
City councilman, you was allowed to be also in private practice.
Yes, because city council's part-time.
And that's when I used to go to his office in
Right.
the afternoon to pick his brains, because
Right,
I always
right.
consider, and this is not any pat in the back or anything, I consider him a very intelligent man and a very fair. And,
Well, your standards must be pretty low on that intelligence.
No.
Thank you for those compliments.
I always, you know that, I always felt that I can learn from him, even if I'm not too much older than he is. You what, 50 now?
Sure. Sure. You know, Rolando,
I'm 51.
here's what I remember. I mean, over the years, I've been on your show in the past. I've been supportive of your newspaper. But more than that, we would run into each other at the coffee shops. Just in casual conversations. We'd sit down and we'd have really nice, friendly, casual conversations. And that means a lot. Those are relationships.
Yeah.
And relationships in this world, whether it be personally or professionally, really mean the difference. Really mean the difference.
You know, Steve, it's very important to a lot of our listeners. I know it's a big subject, and especially after the presidential election. But what are your views on gun violence and gun laws? I'd like to hear from you and your daughter, because you're going to also be a lawyer, and that's part of law enforcement as well. So I'd like to hear your views.
Sure, Chris. Well, I will tell you that gun violence is up in this country, and in particular in this community. We're about to set a record for the homicide rate in Clark County. We're almost at the record number now, and we still have a whole month left. And I don't know what the percentage is. I venture to say it's about 95% of our homicides are as a result of handguns. So my job as the district attorney is to try and do something to cut in to that gun violence. And that's why I supported question 1, which requires the background check on private gun transfer sales. And I'm doing things as the DA to try and lower our gun violence. Let me give you 2 examples. Right now I'm seeking a 3rd grand jury. We have 2 Clark County grand juries, and they hear a lot of our gun cases. And our gun cases involve violent people, people that use guns in home invasions or commercial robberies and kill people. So I'm seeking a 3rd grand jury so that we can more effectively prosecute the real dangerous people. I've added additional lawyers to my gun team in the DA's office because it's really, really important. And then I supported question 1, which I think will save lives. So to answer your question, I mean, gun violence is up, and there's not any one quick fix to cutting into gun violence. It takes a whole collaborative effort.
Rebecca, how do you feel about that?
Well, guns are an interesting topic for me because I grew up in a home where there were guns. However, I did not ever see those guns until I was probably 21 years old. I never knew where they were. They were always kept in a safe. I had no idea where I could even find them.
Right.
But I knew they were there. So it was one of those hesitant yet okay with raising situations. So I think there is a huge gun violence problem. And working for a judge currently, I'm exposed to it a lot more than I ever have been before. I see everything from the defendants who are in our court for allegedly having used guns in crimes, and then I see those that are felons who are in our court because they are prohibited from owning a gun and they are caught with one. So I have a different perspective in terms of different gun issues. I think gun violence is a big problem, and I also support question 1. I think that it will benefit us in the long run.
Is anything that you vary from your father's belief to your belief? You said that you supported question 1.
Correct.
And he does too.
Right.
So is that because he did it or because you believe in
No, it is not because my father is a supporter of
You don't know
question
my
1.
daughter very well. She often disagrees with her father, and is
Really?
to her
Yes.
credit.
Most kids do.
She's
No, okay.
you have 6 kids, right, Chris? No, Rebecca's very independent, and I never try and
Push his opinion.
push
He's never
my
pushed
opinions
anything
on
on
her.
me.
No, I didn't mean that way.
No, I
But you know, normally, most children, someone in the family always takes sides with the father or believe or find the father more into the right position.
Well, if I'm being honest with you, that's not the side I'm usually on.
No?
I'm kidding. No, I support question 1 because it's what I believe, not because it's what my father believes.
Question 1 was the one that the people have to register the guns, right?
Question 1, which became law because the voters passed it.
But that
Will
you
we-
have to register.
No, not register. It's not a gun registration law. It is a law that requires all private gun transfers to go through a federally licensed background check. Right now, before this law goes into effect, at various gun shows or even online, people can buy guns without a background check. And there are criminals, and there are prohibited persons, and there are battery domestic violence individuals and mental health individuals that today are able to buy guns sometimes at a gun show or through an online seller without a background check.
Yeah.
And a background check is a very simple thing to do.
Common sense.
We have many federally licensed gun dealers here in Las Vegas. It's very easy to go down there and have a background check done. So it's a background check law.
And so if you have nothing to hide, why not get the background check?
That's
And
exactly
if you
right.
want to have your children to be safe, that your neighbor is not gonna have a
Yes,
gun
that's right.
when he's not supposed to. And I think
And
that's
it's
the
not-
reason why.
It's not only for the receiver of the weapon that we want to be the right kind of person, but what if you're the seller? Don't you
That's
want
right.
to have peace of mind?
That's right.
You got a gun, you don't need any more, or you got a few
Right.
guns, you don't need that many, and you want to sell it. There's nothing wrong with selling a gun, it's your property.
Right.
But don't you want to have peace of mind that the person you're selling it to is the kind of person that should have a gun? So there's a variety of reasons. That's why I support it.
And you know, and let me tell you, I don't believe in guns, honestly. I never owned a gun, but I believe that you have to be mentally and physically capable to carry a gun. Guns have
They're powerful.
and make the mentality of the people change. They feel Superman.
Yeah,
They feel
yeah.
tough. you know.
When you're holding a dead
And I tell you, I think and I wrote an article about that when Metro used to go to the corner inquest, and they go there with the guns outside and the badge, and I wrote about that, and I can't remember if it was Bill Young or Gillespie, I don't remember. They stopped doing that thing. I wrote that, if you
It was a
got
little
gun-
too heavy-handed, you mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it seems like it was to intimidate the people that was there, and they stopped doing it. I don't know. I know that nobody read the Tribune, but somebody did.
And we don't have the coroner's inquest anymore. We have the new way of doing
Yes,
things.
yes.
And this has been about 5 years since I took over. It's as a result of the coroner's inquest being challenged in the courts and the police officers deciding not to participate. So the county had to come up with a new process, and we came up with these police fatality review hearings.
Right.
Which seem to be working fairly
But
effectively.
Steve, I don't see they give the same kind of publicity to that as they used to do to the. I
Yeah.
find out about the last one after it passed.
Oh.
After it went, I don't
Took
know, was
place,
it a month ago or something like that?
That was one just a couple of weeks ago.
A couple of weeks ago. And I find out about that after I read in the little paper
maybe
on Bonanza.
That's a great point, because maybe we don't publicize it enough. I do believe we put it on our website. I'll have to double check on that. It is a public hearing.
Yeah,
Anybody can
right,
come and
right.
attend, but do we actually announce the setting of the hearing? I'm going to check into that,
Do you
Rolando.
think that maybe the daily paper is not announced enough
The
because they don't
Review-
agree?
the Review Journal, you mean?
Yeah, it's the only daily paper.
I don't think the Review Journal necessarily is made aware of it. The police fatality review hearings come about after the district attorney has made a preliminary decision that the officer's actions are justified.
Right.
Pursuant to the county ordinance, that triggers the DA's office requesting from the county manager to set the hearing. So that's the mechanism. But as far as notification to the public, that's an interesting question. So I'm going to look into that, because we want the public to be invited.
I think it would be.
Yeah, I'll check into it.
And you don't have to be involved in the case in order to go there.
No,
and,
you just might be an interested citizen.
intense, And what about the marijuana?
Well, that's a big subject.
It is a big subject.
That's a big subject.
I personally don't believe the marijuana should be recreational or not. I think, unfortunately, we have enough drugs in the streets to add one more. Even if they said that marijuana is not a drug and whatever it is, I don't believe that it's too easy for children for one more thing. Right now people come home, they got the little plastic bags, they put them under the brassiere or the panties.
It sounds like you know so much about it.
I see a
I don't
lot
know
of
what you're talking about.
I see Law and Order many times. Every Saturday they have the whole day, Law and Order, all day. Anyway, and now you don't need to hide it, so you put them in the coffee table or in the dining room table. You go take a shower, your children come home. Oh, look what my dad left me here, or my mom. Let's don't blame the man only, And
Can't they do that with the alcohol too?
Absolutely.
Isn't that
Absolutely.
just
they
as bad?
can.
Well,
I think honestly, I think alcohol is worse than marijuana.
Well,
But alcohol, unfortunately, is legal.
let me say this: the passage of recreational marijuana is as a result of the people of the state of Nevada that, in a lawful initiative process, voted to allow recreational marijuana. That's followed medicinal marijuana, which I firmly believe in.
So are you prosecuting now these cases?
Well, let me get there.
Oh, okay,
Let me
I'm
get there.
sorry.
I was going to say, medicinal marijuana is as a result of a patient who goes theoretically to a legitimate licensed doctor who does an examination and provides a prescription or a certificate which allows that person with a medical diagnosis to receive medicinal marijuana. I'm in favor of that if it's a legitimate illness from a legitimate doctor. Now, recreational marijuana, you don't need to go to a doctor. Next year, there will be dispensaries, once the Department of Taxation gets done with all of their regulations, that will provide for the sale of marijuana to anybody 21 years of age or older. My perspective is I'm the district attorney and I'm concerned about public safety. And I've looked at studies out of Colorado and Washington, and it's documented that there are an increase in negative behaviors. There's certainly positive behaviors. There's people that enjoy marijuana, and in the sanctity of their home, if they want to enjoy marijuana, I don't really have a problem with that personally, but how it affects the rest of us. There's going to be more people driving while under the influence of marijuana. The studies have shown in states like Colorado and Washington, there's an increased number of traffic accidents and facilities by people who are under the influence of marijuana and oftentimes other drugs. And there's so many other issues. There's an increase in these states of pregnant women that are giving birth to children after they've been ingesting marijuana, and it's affecting the children. And then there's the workplace environment. What are our employers going to do? Are they going to allow their employees to engage in the use of recreational marijuana while on the job?
So
then there's the
now
casinos and the hotels that are grappling with the idea of, are they supposed to allow people to smoke marijuana in their hotel rooms? So from a law enforcement standpoint, there's a new council, if you will, that's been put together by Metro, and I'm on it. A lot of law enforcement agencies, prosecutors, to start to decide what are we going to do about this. Because the law goes into effect technically January 1st. If you're over the age of 21, you're allowed to legally possess under an ounce of marijuana. Where are you going to get it from?
That's in recreational, right?
Recreational. Where is the person on January 2nd going to obtain the marijuana from? Because the dispensaries aren't yet allowed to sell it.
Exactly.
So there's going to be a whole discussion amongst law enforcement folks about how we're going to handle a variety of these issues.
But I read that you don't going to prosecute anyone.
Well, what I
right?
said was I made a policy decision, and that was that effective January 1st, the law says if you're over 21, you can possess less than an ounce of marijuana. What I decided to do was those folks that are going to be cited for the misdemeanor possession of marijuana after the election, which means November 8th through December 31st, we're going to give them a special diversionary program. So they're not going to suffer a conviction. Now, my prosecutors have discretion. If a 5-time felon comes in and he's smoking marijuana on a street corner, we may not give that person diversion. But for the typical marijuana possessor that has a small amount in their possession, after our voters spoke, and before the new law goes into effect, we're going to give them some sort of diversion rather than a conviction.
But let me just tell you, from my perspective, working for a judge who sees a variety of different criminal defendants, a lot of the people who come in who are being charged with possession of marijuana, that's not their only charge. That was incidental to whatever else they were doing that is against the law.
I wanted to ask you that.
Oh, okay.
We're kind of 3 graybeards up here. I know you're a lot younger than us. Because I had a bunch of young people on my show yesterday, and younger people look at the marijuana issue totally different than people from our generation. How does the younger generation feel about the legality of marijuana and the uses of marijuana?
Well, I'd hate to speak for everyone, but I'm not going to speak for everyone. I know people on both sides. I know people who are very happy that recreationally it has passed, and then people who disagree with the recreational aspect. It really just depends on who I'm talking to. And I think that, yes, it is a generational thing. I think that the younger generation, with the advancement of technology and social media and the quickness of everything's so much more instant in the way that we communicate. And this all factors into how we live our lives. And so the accessibility of alcohol, of drugs, of everything for the younger generation is very different than how it was when you guys were growing up. So I think that has a lot to play into it. I think that it should be everyone's own personal choice. And now that it is, and now that it can be, it should be treated similar to how we treat alcohol. And it is. I mean, the law says that unless you're 21 years of age or older, you can't buy it, and you can't possess it.
Isn't it more difficult to realize that the person is high than when the person is drunk? At least when the person is drunk, they smell alcohol.
I think that that's a very subjective question. I think that it depends. I think if you're belligerently drunk, it can be very obvious. I also know people who can drink and you would never be able to know. Same goes for the marijuana. I know people who could probably get away with not ever showing any symptoms or signs, as opposed to people who are very obvious. So I think it just depends on the person.
That's one of the aspects of one of the things that our legislature is going to have to look into, because the law regarding driving while under the influence of marijuana, as it stands right now, there are presumptive levels. If you have either 2 nanograms or 5 nanograms of either the marijuana or the metabolite in your system, and that's as a result of generally a blood test, you are presumed to be under the influence. But many studies have shown that those are arbitrary numbers, and they don't necessarily mean that you're under the influence. You may smoke a lot of marijuana on a given night and then go to bed and wake up the next morning and drive to work and get a little fender bender, and an amount of marijuana may show up in your blood system which suggests you're under the influence, but in reality you're not, because you slept through the night and you got up the next day. So I know our legislature is going to look to change some of the laws with regard to how we measure one's impairment. That's the key. So I don't care if somebody ingests any drug, so long as it doesn't affect their ability to drive a vehicle safely. When you're driving with your children, you want to feel comfortable that the guy next to you on the road is able to operate that 4,000, 6,000 pound vehicle in a safe way.
So let me ask you, that's more or less, and this is, I'm asking you this question because that was before you became a district attorney. That was more or less the same thing that happened with Jessica Williams. Jessica Williams didn't show any aspect of being under the influence or anything. And this I learned from the trial. I was there. Judge Gibbons was the judge, and the highway patrol asked her, "Do you have you smoked anything? Have you had drugs?" And she said, "We smoked a joint in the Valley of Fire a couple of hours ago." And he said, "Do you have any more?" And she said, "Yeah, I got some in the truck, in the van." He said, "Go get it." Well, in my opinion, I'm not an expert, if the highway patrol would have seen that she was ineptly to go there and get it, he would have not tell her, "Go get the marijuana." He would have put her in handcuffs and would have go there and get himself the. That's the way, more or less, it is.
Well, you're talking about a case that occurred a decade ago or more?
14 years ago.
14 years ago, and you certainly have a special keen interest in the case because you followed it back then. I'm going based upon a general recollection of the facts. I do know that 8 children lost their lives. 7. 7 children lost their lives while they were working on a cleanup maintenance crew off the side of the road, and Ms. Williams, I believe, was convicted of behavior which allowed her to drive, out of the lanes. She fell asleep. Is that what it was?
That's what it
So I'm not going to comment.
That's what it was in the trial. I wasn't there.
And neither was I. So it's hard for me to comment with specificity on the facts of that case. I know it's controversial. I know that a person who may engage in that same behavior today may be treated differently.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day,
At the end
if
of
you
the day,
fall asleep, that means you're negligent.
That's right.
And if you're a negligent driver and you cause death, there's got to be consequences.
Absolutely.
You know, because if there weren't consequences, our society would say it's okay to smoke marijuana if it makes you a little sleepy.
That's right.
It's okay.
Yeah.
She killed it. Or she
Well,
killed
you know,
7
I
people.
tell you, I have fallen asleep in the road,
Yeah.
maybe for a second.
And what do you do?
I
do you
pull
do?
over.
You pull
I
over.
pull over.
So if there's signs of an incapacity where you're
Yeah.
not able to be safe, the
Yeah.
prudent driver would pull over.
Half past the hour, you are listening to Face the Tribune with the legendary Rolando Larraz. We are so blessed today to have special guest, Clark County District Attorney Steve Wolfson, and his wonderful daughter Rebecca is sitting in today, and we are so blessed to have them. You can watch us live later. Google us at Face the Tribune with Rolando Larraz, and you can watch us on YouTube, and we will soon be getting a deal to be on 94.7 FM, and you can listen to us daily from 12 to 1 o'clock. Thank you guys so much for being on. And I want to get
And
back.
we're also going to be at 3 o'clock in the morning, so the people in the East Coast can
That's
listen
right.
to us
That's so
at
nice
6
of you.
o'clock.
That's
Yeah.
right.
So nice of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to get back a little bit on the gun violence and the gun laws. I feel a lot like Rebecca does. I grew up in a family. My dad was military for 21 years. He was an MP. And we grew up around guns. He took us shooting.
What branch of the service was he
He
in?
was in the Army.
Because my father was a captain in the military police in World War II.
Oh, wow.
So we have something in common.
Yes, yes. So I grew up and guns was a part of life, but we knew not to touch that.
Yeah.
That was off of limits. What do you guys think? It's a question for both of you. It seems to be such a political argument today. They politicize. You know, the National Rifle Association has got involved with so many of the elections that have been going on. And you know, I'm very conservative myself, and I feel like we are constitutionally allowed to protect ourselves and bear arms. What do you guys think about that?
You want to go first?
Well, yeah, and let me just, I mean, yes, we did grow up with gun mouse, but very differently than you. I never saw these guys. I knew that they existed somewhere, but I didn't grow up. My dad never took me shooting. So all of my gun knowledge has come from elsewhere. It's come from my own research. And just to be frank with you, I'm actually in the market to purchase my own. Now, let me just preface that. I'm not comfortable owning a gun yet. I have not had enough practice. I've gone to the shooting range, and I'm still not quite that comfortable to personally own my own gun. So until I get to that point, I won't own one. Now, I agree with you. Yes, constitutionally, as Americans, it is one of our rights to bear arms. It is one of our constitutional rights. And I believe in that. However, all of this political talk behind question one we're not taking away anything with regards to your Second Amendment rights. Nothing about that is being taken away. Background checks aren't prohibiting you from what you're lawfully allowed to do. It's just keeping things safe. So, yeah, I mean, it's a very controversial topic, but
Absolutely.
How about you?
how'd that make you feel?
Listen, I am a gun owner. I own 2 weapons. I actually own my father's World War II issued Colt 45.
Oh, wow.
When he came back from the service in the 40s, he brought back his military Army footlocker, which I have, that says Captain L. Wolfson on it, and his handgun, his sidearm, which is, like I said, the Colt 45. I have the original weapon, I have the original bullets, I actually have the original holster. And then I have another handgun as well. And I have them in my home for self-protection, because I believe in a person's right to do just that, protect oneself. But I also feel that along with that comes some personal responsibility. I think Rebecca is basically saying that she will take some gun courses, learn about gun safety, and once she feels comfortable, then maybe she'll be a gun owner. And that's what I call personal responsibility.
Right.
As far as the availability of weapons, I think we have more weapons than we have people in the United States. You know, I've become friends recently with a gentleman from Australia, and he's living here in the United States, but he's from Australia, and he tells me they have very different gun laws down in Australia. The average citizen in Australia doesn't own a weapon. Now, that's Australia. We have the United States of America, we have, the Constitution, and I don't say what we're doing is wrong, but I'll again propose some personal responsibility. So when it comes to the sale or transfer of weapons, it's a minor request to have somebody go through a background check.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. And that's what I used to talk about. I'm like, to me, we have a lot of laws already on the books. Do you think it's we need to make new laws on the books, or you think the laws need to just be instituted that we already have on the books? That to me is a big argument. To me, a lot of the politicizing that we need new laws on the books, and to me, I think we already have a lot of laws on the books that just need to be followed and just need to be instituted. What do you think?
Well, I think it's both, Chris. I think that, we are a different community. When I say community, I'm not talking about just Clark County, I'm talking about the United States of America today than we were just 20 years ago. I heard on the television a couple of days ago that I believe we've had 103 police officers shot and killed this year alone, more than any other year. 103 police officers. It's a terrible, terrible thing. That's gun violence. There is such a different, state of mind about the availability of guns, the accessibility of guns, the acceptance of guns. So I think it's a combination of enforcing certain laws on the books, maybe being a little bit more proactive, and a reevaluation. Is there anything more we can do? Background check is one of those.
Yeah, I think, and I think that people have to realize, I write about this all the time, people have to realize that when they get stopped by a police car or police officer, they have to realize that that police officer rightfully have the right to be nervous because all these killings, and you don't know who you stop. Try to make it easy for him. Try to put your hands in the wheel and try to obey his or her orders.
No, that's good
because
advice.
It is, and I'm the kind of person when they need to be criticized, I criticize. But I believe that the police officers should have the peace of mind that they are going to go home at night.
Wouldn't it be nice if we all had that peace of mind when
Anywhere,
anyone?
I tell you, Kathy Hancock was the judge in district court. One day I get out the courthouse and I see her in the sidewalk. And I said, "What are you doing, Judge?" She said, "I'm waiting for my ride." I said, "Well, why can't you wait inside?" She said, "Why?" I said, "Because you just put somebody in jail for 20 years and he's not going to do nothing to you, but the brother or the son or the father, you have, yeah." I mean, she said, "Well, I cannot live like that." And she used to walk from the old courthouse to the courthouse cafe.
Yeah.
And I believe that the judges need to be a little more protected.
Well, the judges, have their own individual marshals.
But they don't all go to the car with them.
No, they don't. But many of them do. Many of the female judges in particular have their marshals escort them back and forth to their vehicles. Yes.
I believe, and I'm very critical of law enforcement when they abuse their position and everything else, but I also believe that the people that are in law enforcement, either district attorney or police officers, judges, they need to be protected. They need to be.
Well, then why don't you go to the county manager and ask for an increase in the budget so that all of us judges and district attorneys can have more protection?
You can have your own bodyguard?
No, I don't think that.
You carry a gun. You don't need a gun.
Himself. I don't think
Now, let me say this on one thing you mentioned, and that is, I've often used this expression because I heard it a few years ago. I don't think there's a single police officer that wakes up in the morning and says, "I want to be involved in an officer-involved shooting." It's the last thing they want to be involved in. They don't go looking for trouble.
And I tell you,
But at the same time, there have been some controversial shootings in the last few years. We've had a couple right here in Las Vegas with the Stanley Gibson and the Eric Scott. Those were justified shootings, but they raised the sensitivity in our community about police officers and their interactions with citizens. You know, like you said, citizens have to be aware that police officers have the authority to stop them and conduct investigations under the law. At the same time, police officers have to recognize that sometimes citizens don't understand all the rules and the laws. And I will say this, Metro in the last few years, as a result of the Department of Justice, which came in and did their review about 5 years ago, has adopted 2 policies which have really worked. And that is, number one, a mindset of this recognizing the sanctity of life. You know, we're talking about human life here. So they need to recognize that before they decide to use deadly force, they need to recognize the sanctity of life. And then secondly, and equally as important, is a policy of de-escalation. Instead of doing something to escalate the emotions and the anxiety of a situation, let's calm everything down. And I can give you one example in particular. A few weeks ago, there was an armed man outside a convenience store, a citizen, and he was waving a gun and pointing a gun, and police officers arrived. And I'm being very general in my description, but I'm pretty sure I'm pretty accurate. The officers of yesterday may have shot and killed that man because he's holding a gun and waving it, okay? In this incident, they used beanbags. They used something less than deadly force, and they fired their beanbags and disabled this man. There was another case a few years ago where there was a barricaded situation, a man in a house where he shouldn't have been, and the police went inside the house. They forced the confrontation. I don't believe that would happen today. I believe, you know, and every case is different. You have to study the facts, and there's a case-by-case analysis. But today, I think the police would have an attitude of, let's de-escalate the situation. Let's see if we can wait them out. We don't want to shoot and kill somebody. I don't think any police officer wants to do that.
I want to ask you and Rebecca a question. I come from the south side of Chicago, and it's a very violent, it's the most violent city in the country. It's a prosecutorial question. And I used to tell people that oftentimes Chicago police officers were set up. They would have a 911 call, they would show up, and there would be gang members that would begin to shoot at them. And some of those police officers were even murdered. And my question is, I believe whether it's federal or local law enforcement, I think the taking of the life of a law enforcement officer, to me, would that not be possibly considered an act of terrorism? And how would you go about prosecuting, you and Rebecca, someone that takes a law enforcement officer's life?
Well, I'll tell you, under the scenario you just described, where people purposely call 911 and create a situation where an officer responds to a scene and then they execute him, you know, that's first-degree murder.
That's premeditated.
It's premeditated, like Rebecca says. I don't know if it's a terrorist attack because, you know, the term terrorism is used nowadays more than it ever has been. But it's certainly one of the most, if not the most serious crimes that may qualify for the prosecutor to seek the death penalty. And you know, Chris, I'm not intimately familiar with the problem in Chicago, but I'm aware of it. And I know that there are some weekend days where 30 people are the victims of gun violence. And most of those are young African-American men.
68 young African-American men were shot over Thanksgiving weekend.
68. Is that over a 4-day or a 2-day?
4-day.
I mean, it's unacceptable. And, you know, I know that the law enforcement officials in Chicago have to be struggling with what to do, but something's got to be done. Thank God we don't have those kind of statistics here.
Yes.
No, I'm not a prosecutor, so I don't really have that prosecutorial mindset that my father does. But I am a firm believer that anyone who has the ability to premeditate and deliberate about killing another human being, regardless of whether they're police or a neighbor or someone you don't like, it's awful. Those are the most criminals.
Yes.
Like those are the hardest criminals because those aren't good people. And those are the ones that shouldn't be on our streets, regardless of who they end up killing, if they're in a uniform, what have you. It's still terrible, and it should be punished accordingly.
I believe, and I talk about this all the time, and me and my mentor here, we talk about it all the time, but I believe that a lot of African Americans in this country, and I don't mean to get political, but you know, they bring up Black Lives Matter and they march through the streets, and I believe, to me, myself, when they go around vandalizing property, when they have set up, I believe, police officers around this country to be shot recently, I believe that is a terrorist organization. And to me, it's no different than Al-Qaeda or ISIL or any other organization. You know, I think that I understand what you're saying, and it's just a first-degree murder charge, and it's a very serious charge, but I think these organizations need to be considered terrorist organizations.
I just wrote about that.
I really do believe that.
I just wrote about that last week. They said peaceful demonstration. Peaceful, and they burn buildings and they destroy cars. That's not peaceful in my little English, you know. I know I don't speak English as well as you do, but
You're not doing too bad.
you know. But I believe that that's not peaceful.
Well, you know, we all know that there's a reason the First Amendment is the First Amendment. It's special. It is special to this country. It allows freedom of expression, freedom of association, freedom of speech.
Yeah.
And I don't think any of us would want to take that away. But there are lines that you should not cross. And that's when you talk about the vandalism and the violence and things like that. If people cross the line, they have to be dealt with. You know, one thing I'm very proud of in this community is that a few years ago, over the last few years, we've had a number of controversial shootings in this country. Ferguson, Baltimore, and other places. And those communities have reacted in very violent ways. People on the streets doing the vandalism and, hurting their neighbor's property.
Yeah.
Las Vegas has not had that.
Yes.
And I think that that's in part a direct result of what was Sheriff Gillespie and now Sheriff Lombardo's multicultural advisory committee. Have you ever gone to any of those meetings,
No.
Rolando?
No,
you should
I'm
get
not
in.
welcome in Metro.
Well, maybe I'll get you re-invited.
Okay, I would love
Because
to.
once a month, people from a vast number of cultures in this community, I don't care if you're black, white, red, green, Hindu, Muslim, Jewish, Arab, Asian, whatever, because there's about 30, 40, 50 people at these multicultural advisory committee meetings. It's head up, the chairman is an African-American guy. His name is, what's his name, Audrey? Mujahideen Ramadan. He's the chairman. Anyways, as a result of the various cultures of this community getting together on a regular basis to discuss the issues that are important, we haven't had those violent protests here. And when incidents occur in other cities, because of the community involvement, the various people go out to their constituents and say, listen, you have a right to be angry and concerned and upset. It's how you express yourself. So we haven't had that violence, which is pretty remarkable here.
And I honestly believe that we have a great police force.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we do.
Sometimes
Yes,
I don't agree with the
Yes.
administration, but that is not the one that is out there in the street. I had a ticket one time and I praised the guy, believe it or not.
You were probably speeding.
No, I don't speed. I'm too old for that. I don't remember what was it, but I don't.
That time he fell asleep.
No, but I believe that we have a great police force.
Yes, we do.
They're very, very dedicated. I don't. Unfortunately, it is unfortunately because I have a newspaper and I got this venue over here, then I can inform people better if I have a better relationship with the administration. And I never met Sheriff Lombardo, but I have my issues with Sheriff Gillespie. He think I am I forgot what he think I am.
A thorn in his side.
No,
Listen, Rolando, you're a voice in this community, and reasonable minds can differ. You know, we can have differences of opinion as long as we treat people with respect and dignity.
and I expect the same thing to happen to me. Maybe I don't agree with Gillespie's voice, and he might not agree with my voice, but we should be able to sit down or at least being invited to the press conference or any
Well, there's
of
a
that.
new sheriff in town. His name
It
is
is.
Lombardo.
It is a new sheriff.
It's not so new. He's been on the job until he got elected the same year as myself. And,
Really?
well, I was appointed in 2012 and then
I
elected,
remember when
and
you
then
were
elected in
appointed.
14. So,
Yeah, and Steve, last, and even though this is not during your term, but it's still in the plate, I'd like to ask you a question. Why is such a rejection on Christine Lobato to produce a DNA test? Why the I don't know if it was the judge or your office, then they keep making, and you don't have to answer if you don't think it's proper. I don't want to interfere with
well,
you.
let me try and talk to you about that case, for example.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and I'll tell you a little story quickly. I had the
Are
privilege
you
of.
getting in position to slap me?
No, I'm stretching. You're
Hey, when he turned, I was about to have
stretching. You're a big guy. You don't know. Let me tell you a quick little story. A couple weeks ago, I had the privilege of conducting an interview of Christopher Darden, who was one of the two prosecutors in the O.J. Simpson murder case in California.
Yes.
He was the guest speaker at an event at the UNLV Boyd Law School alumni dinner, and they figured it'd be great to have the DA interview him up on stage. So I had the privilege of meeting Mr. Darden beforehand during dinner. And I knew I was going to ask him a bunch of questions. And I said to him, you know, Mr. Darden, is there anything I can't ask you? You know, out of a courtesy, is there anything you want me to ask you? He says, no, you can ask me anything. So my attitude right here with you, Rolando, is you can ask me anything.
But you're not going to
Because that's what Mr. Darden did. I asked him a question about whose idea was it to have O.J. Simpson try on the glove. He says, I'm not going to answer that. So he didn't mind me asking him as long as I respected that he didn't have to answer. But I'm going to answer your question, okay?
You are? Oh, good.
Yeah, well, the Kirsten Lobato case occurred many years before I became the district attorney. It's been in litigation for a number of years, and our Nevada Supreme Court just granted in part and denied in part certain relief. The bottom line is they've granted an evidentiary hearing into certain things. I'm not going to go into the specifics of the DNA testing. I will tell you that the trial judge twice rejected her request to have new DNA testing because the trial judge determined that no matter what the result of the test is, it would not have affected the outcome of the trial. But in the interest of doing the right thing, my office is reviewing the Lobato matter. The Supreme Court order just came down a week ago. In fact, we're having a meeting today, coincidentally, at 3 p.m., me and my highest ranking folks, to discuss what is the right avenue to proceed on with this particular defendant. She's been in custody
14 years.
14?
14 years. She was 19 years
Was
old.
it 2001 that she was, I think the crime was in 01 and she was convicted in 03 maybe?
I think so.
Something like that. I don't know. I have so many cases, sometimes I get the years. Bottom line is she's been in prison for a long time. She was
And then she got another trial.
Well, you're right. And the second trial, she was convicted of manslaughter.
Right. Instead of murder.
Instead of murder. And then I think of having sexual relations with a dead body. Now, my understanding is that she has served her sentence on the manslaughter, and she's now serving the remainder. She's only got a couple years left in prison. So we're going to review the situation, and we're going to do what we think is fair.
I know you will do that.
Well, it
Who
depends on
do
what.
you meet with, Chris?
Who's Chris?
Chris Orange.
Chris has been retired for 3 years now.
Really?
Where you been?
Oh, where am
No,
I?
I've got,
So who is your second
well,
guy?
I've got two
Robert?
people that are seconds. It's
Robert?
Robert Daskus
Robert
and
Daskus.
Christopher Lawley.
Yeah.
They're both my assistant.
Christopher Lally. That's what I
They're
was
both my
thinking
assistant district attorneys. But I have a group of prosecutors whose opinions I respect a great deal, including my appellate division. And we're going to discuss the certain choices we have with regard to Ms. Lobato, and we're going to do what we think is right.
We are coming to the end of our show today. Thank you so much for listening to Radio Tribune. Face the Tribune with Rolando Larraz. We're just so blessed today to have our District Attorney Steve Wolfson and his wonderful daughter Rebecca. And today we could talk for another hour, but unfortunately our time is up.
Next time.
Oh, wonderful. And you can listen to us rebroadcast all day on Radio Tribune, and you can Google us at facethetribune.com with the legendary Rolando Larraz and watch us this evening.
And I wanted to say thank you to Audrey Locke for facilitating this interview with my friend Steve Wolfson.
Yes.
And now Rebecca also.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you
And
very
you
much.
have a friend here at Radio Tribune. You have our support, and you can come here and anytime you want to talk. Anything you want to run for, you can come. And I'm going to tell you what, I see a future president right here and a future DA. So it's wonderful to have you guys. And thank you for listening. Continue with Dia, and we will see you tomorrow at 12 o'clock. God bless America, and God bless our troops.